Researchers at Harvard University spent decades studying one question. Why do some people survive the unsurvivable? Why do some people walk out of circumstances that destroy everyone else around them? The same poverty, the same abuse, the same loss, the same war. And one person collapses, and another one builds an empire from the ruins. They called what they found resilience. But that word is too soft for what they actually discovered. What they found was something closer to architecture. A specific internal structure, a way of seeing the world and responding to pain that functions differently from everyone else. Not a gift, not luck, not genetics. A built thing, a constructed thing. Something forged deliberately in the hardest seasons of a person's life. I am going to show you that architecture today. I am going to break down exactly what separates the people who get destroyed by hard times from the people who get built by them. And I am going to give you the exact framework that the most unbreakable humans who ever lived used to become who they were. Stay with me for the next 15 minutes, because what you are about to hear is not motivation. It is construction. And by the end of it, you will either start building or you will finally understand why you have not. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist in Vienna when the Nazis took everything from him. His wife, his parents, his manuscript, his freedom. He was sent to 4 concentration camps, including Auschwitz. He had every reason in the world to stop, every clinical reason, every human reason. He did not stop. He observed. And what he observed in the camps changed psychology forever. He noticed that the prisoners who survived were not always the strongest, not always the healthiest, not always the most well-fed or the most protected. The prisoners who survived were the ones who found a reason, a meaning, something ahead of them that the present circumstances could not erase. He wrote about this in a book called Man's Search for Meaning, a book that has now sold over 16 million copies in 40 languages, a book written by a man who had lost everything, who sat in the dark and found a light that nobody could take from him. Frankl called this the last human freedom, the freedom to choose your response to any circumstance. They can take your health, your family, your money, your future, but they cannot take the space between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. That space is yours, forever. And inside that space is where unbreakable people live. Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck spent 30 years studying this same phenomenon from a different angle. She found that humans operate on one of 2 fundamental mindsets. A fixed mindset that believes ability is permanent and failure is identity. Or a growth mindset that believes ability is built and failure is data. The unbreakable people in every study she ran operated from growth, without exception, every single one. The science is not ambiguous. Unbreakable is not born. It is decided. There is a moment. And if you have been alive long enough, you have already met it. The moment when the thing you were counting on disappears. The job, the relationship, the plan, the health, the version of the future you had built in your mind. Gone. And in that moment, something happens in the brain that neuroscience has now mapped in extraordinary detail. The amygdala fires, the threat response activates, cortisol floods the system. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for long-term thinking and rational decision-making, goes partially offline. And the entire weight of the nervous system shifts into one single primitive question. Am I going to survive this? Most people answer that question from the fear, from the flood, from the immediate overwhelming sensation that what just happened is the end of something important. And they are right. It is the end of something. But here is what the unbreakable person understands that the broken person does not. The end of something is always the beginning of something else. Always. Without exception. In every case in recorded human history, The door that closes is not a wall. It is a redirection. And the people who walk out of destruction stronger than they walked in are the people who trained themselves to look for the door while the fire was still burning. Winston Churchill lost his position as First Lord of the Admiralty after the catastrophic failure of the Gallipoli campaign. He was publicly humiliated, politically destroyed, cast aside. He was 40 years old and it looked like his career was finished. He went home and he started painting. He spent years in what he called his black dog, his depression, his wilderness. And then, 25 years later, the world needed someone who had survived their worst possible moment and come back from it. And there was only one man who had done it completely enough to lead through what was coming. Churchill walked back in and changed the course of the war and of history. Your breaking point is not your ending point. It is your beginning point. Steel is not found in nature. Steel is made. Iron ore pulled from the ground, heated to temperatures that would kill anything alive. Hammered, cooled, hammered again. Tested until the impurities have been burned away. And what remains is something that iron could never be on its own. Harder, more flexible, unbreakable under pressure that would shatter the original material completely. You are the ore, and the suffering is the furnace. I know that sounds like a motivational poster. I know it is easy to say that from the outside of someone's pain. But I am not talking about toxic positivity. I am not telling you that everything happens for a reason in the way that means nothing bad should hurt. I am telling you something that is neurologically and psychologically demonstrable. Researchers at the University of Buffalo studied over 2,000 people and tracked their history of adversity against their mental health outcomes. The result was counterintuitive. The people who had faced zero adversity were not the most psychologically healthy, and the people who had faced the most adversity were not the most damaged. The people with the best outcomes, the most resilience, the most capacity to handle what life brought them were the people who had faced a moderate amount of adversity and come through it. Adversity is training, and like all training, it only works if you do not quit before the adaptation happens. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school varsity basketball team. He went home and cried in his room. And then he went back to the gym and worked harder than anyone around him had ever seen anyone work. He did not ask why it happened. He asked what it was going to make him. Same question, different direction, completely different life. Here is the most dangerous thing in your life right now. And it is not your circumstances. It is not your finances. It is not the people around you or the opportunities you do not have or the time you feel like you have wasted. The most dangerous thing in your life is the story you are telling yourself about who you are. Psychologists call this the narrative self, the ongoing internal story that each person tells about their own life, who they are, what they deserve, what is possible for them, what their past means about their future. This narrative runs constantly in the background of every decision you make, and most people have never once examined it. The unbreakable person is not someone who has never been broken by their story. They are someone who rewrote it, who took the narrative of victim and replaced it with the narrative of architect, who looked at the same facts of their life and found a different meaning inside them. Oprah Winfrey was born into poverty in rural Mississippi. She was abused. She was told she was not fit for television. A news director fired her from her first TV job and told her she was unfit to be on screen. The facts of that story could have written the rest of her life as a victim of circumstance. Instead, she chose a different story. Not that nothing bad happened, but that what happened was not allowed to decide what came next. The story is not assigned to you. It is chosen. Every day. Every moment you react to a setback. Every morning you decide whether what happened yesterday means anything about today. You are writing the story right now. The only question is whether you are writing it consciously or letting the pain write it for you. Take the pen back. Now I want to get specific. Because everything I have said so far is meaningless unless it translates into what you actually do tomorrow morning. The unbreakable person is not a concept. They are a daily practice, a set of behaviors repeated so consistently that they become structural, part of the architecture of the self. Here is what the research shows those behaviors are. First, they control the first hour. Neuroscience is clear that the first 60 minutes after waking set the neurochemical tone for the entire day. Cortisol peaks naturally in the morning. The unbreakable person does not reach for the phone and flood that peak with other people's crises and opinions. They use that window to move their body, to focus their mind, to remind themselves who they are and what they are building, before the world gets its hands on them. Second, they practice voluntary discomfort. Every single day, the unbreakable person does something they do not want to do. Not because they are masochists, but because the practice of overriding the comfort signal is a skill. And like all skills, it atrophies without use. The cold water, the hard conversation, the extra mile, the workout when the body says stop. These are not health practices. They are identity practices. Daily proof to the nervous system that discomfort does not get to make the decisions. Third, they protect their focus like a resource, because it is one. The average American now has an attention span shorter than a goldfish, according to Microsoft research. The unbreakable person treats their focus the way a professional athlete treats their body. Deliberate, protected, trained, single-tasked. Because they understand that the most powerful competitive advantage left in the modern world is the ability to think deeply without interruption for extended periods of time. These are not habits, they are weapons, and the unbreakable person sharpens them every single day. I want to show you a pattern. It is the same pattern repeated across every domain of extraordinary human achievement in recorded history. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Thomas Edison failed over 10,000 times before he produced a working electric light bulb. 10,000, not 10, not 100. 10,000 documented failures across years of sustained effort that the entire scientific establishment of his time said was impossible. When a reporter asked him how it felt to have failed 10,000 times, he said he had not failed 10,000 times. He had successfully discovered 10,000 ways that did not work. Same facts, different story, different outcome. J.K. Rowling was a single mother on welfare, clinically depressed, recently divorced, with a manuscript that had been rejected by 12 publishing houses when Bloomsbury finally gave her a chance. The first Harry Potter print run was 500 copies. Today, the series has sold over 600 million books. The difference between the woman sitting in a cafe writing by hand because she could not afford heating and the most successful author in history was not talent. It was the refusal to accept the rejection as a verdict. Abraham Lincoln lost 8 elections before becoming President of the United States during the most catastrophic crisis in American history. He suffered depression so severe that his friends hid sharp objects from him. He lost his mother, his sister, his first love, his business partner to death. He was publicly mocked and humiliated throughout his career, and he did not stop. The pattern is not genius. The pattern is not luck. The pattern is one thing repeated across every single case. They did not stop before the arrival. They kept building in the dark. They kept working when the evidence said quit. They protected the long game when every short-term signal said it was over. The unbreakable always win in the end because the broken quit before the end arrives. And the end always arrives for the ones still standing. I want to end with something that is not comfortable to say. But I am going to say it because it is the truest thing in this entire video. The hard thing you are facing right now is not happening to you. It is happening for you. Not in the soft way that means everything will be easy, In the hard way, that means this pressure is specifically calibrated to build in you exactly what you need to become who you were meant to be. Every piece of research on resilience points to the same conclusion. The people who emerge from the hardest circumstances with the most capacity are not the ones who avoided the fire. They are the ones who walked into it and came out the other side, understanding something that no comfort could ever teach them. That they are capable of more than they knew, that the worst thing they could imagine did not destroy them, and that the knowledge of their own survival is a foundation that nothing can shake. You are not fragile. You have been trained by a world that profits from your insecurity to believe that you are, that you need protection, that you need comfort, that the hard thing should be avoided. But the hard thing is the gift. The hard thing is the curriculum. And you enrolled in it the moment you were born into the specific circumstances that produced the specific version of you that is watching this right now. Viktor Frankl survived Auschwitz and said this: "Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way, that is yours. It has always been yours. No circumstance, no person, no failure, no loss, no diagnosis, no rejection, no amount of time wasted. Nothing can take it from you. You decide what this means. You decide what comes next. You decide right now in this moment whether what has happened to you is the story or the beginning of the story. Choose the beginning. Because the world does not need another person who was broken by hard times. The world needs the unbreakable version of you. And that version is built right now, today, in the hard thing you almost walked away from. Do not walk away."